So joining us now at this time, senior NFL reporter for Underdog Fantasy, also NFL insider for Bleacher Report. It's our good friend James Palmer joining us on the line, who spends a good deal of time in and around the Denver Broncos, and he was there yesterday for the game against what amounted to the Chiefs minus their all-pro players. That inactive list was a who's who yesterday for the Chiefs. Holy cow. Bills in a similar boat yesterday, sitting a lot of people against the Patriots. And, the Broncos, to their credit, took care of business, James. So how much do we put value in the impressive performance we saw from the Chiefs, or for the Broncos offense yesterday? How much of a grain of salt do we have to take knowing who the Chiefs were putting on the field?
Yeah, I think you take a grain of salt with it for sure. But I think outside of Week 18, the Denver Broncos really showed everybody they are a playoff team, right? They had 3 games to win 1. They should have beaten the Chargers. They had an unbelievable first half and fell apart. They should have beaten Cincinnati. In my opinion, should have went for 2 before it went into overtime against Joe Burrow. And so being in both of those games, where they're both playoff teams, with a chance to get into the postseason, showed you, and what else they did throughout the course of the season, that this was a playoff team. And obviously they got in a fashion that was a little bit, it was a dominant performance against a team that was, found out that they were staying in Denver the night because of the weather in Kansas City, who was probably, the morale was low on that side of things and locked up the #1 seed. But nevertheless, this was the longest playoff drought for a team since winning the Super Bowl. 8 seasons now since they won Super Bowl 50 with Peyton Manning quarterbacking that team. So nevertheless, it was a huge moment in Denver, a huge moment for the fans with a rookie quarterback in Sean Payton. And actually, I will say this, guys. I was talking to Peyton on the sideline, Peyton Manning, that is, prior to the game, and he said, I'm going to get us this win because I've been dying to see a playoff game with my Denver Broncos with my son, and I changed suites. I used to be in that corner over there when I was a player. I've changed suites. I've changed the mojo. And so Peyton Manning is responsible for them.
Okay.
Finally
Yeah, probably.
I did not know that.
And I'll say this too.
This is the inside information we need from James.
This Broncos team is no fluky. They've been in the playoff bracket since Week 7. I mean, they've been there. Now they've been all the way up to 6 because they're not catching the Chiefs at whatever, although they should have beaten the Chiefs in Kansas City, right? I mean, that's how good they are. They really did rise up and play a great game that day, got one bad play at the end of the game, and it cost them. But that's a team that they're the only other team in the league that really could say, we should have beaten the Chiefs, and the Bills are the only other team. This is a Broncos team with a defense like they've got, a head coach as savvy and smart as Sean Payton is. They really got to like the way they're feeling coming into this playoff run, right?
Yeah, they really do. I mean, this is a hot defense. I mean, this is one of the better defensive units in football, and I think we do have to give Vance Joseph some credit, who's getting his name, out there once again in the hiring cycle for the head coach positionings and openings that are out there. I'd expect a couple of interviews from VJ talking to him yesterday. Without a lot of household names, guys, on this defense. We all know Patrick Surtain, one of the best corners in football, and in my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinion, should be in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year. That's how good he's been. He shadows #1s quite a bit. That doesn't happen in the league all that much. But outside of Surtain, I don't think people outside of Denver can name 5 members of this defense. I mean, that's how good they are as a unit. Zach Allen up front's been playing great. I think as a defensive line, that's been their biggest strength, and I'm excited to see them go against one of the best offensive lines in football that Buffalo has. I mean, I think this game has 2 of the better offensive lines. Actually, Denver's been healthy as well in their offensive line, but this group up front is really just, I talked to DJ Jones about it after the game. It's a bunch of man strength up there, right? With Malcolm Roach and DJ Jones and Jonathan Franklin Myers, Zach Allen. They got 2 great edge rushers in Jonathan Cooper and Nick Benito. So getting after the quarterback has been the name of the game for them. It's 63 sacks this year. I mean, that's unbelievable. I think the Ravens were second with 54. So they get after the quarterback. That's been the name of the game. Secondary doesn't have to cover very long. The one weakness that we can get into it, I think, is the linebacker spot at the inside. And we know the way Buffalo can attack the middle of the field. I think that's an issue for this defense, but there's a lot to like about Denver's defense for sure.
All right, so we've gotten this far, and we haven't talked about Bo Nix yet. And, this is a guy who, I think unfairly didn't get as much coverage as Jaden Daniels did, but played in just as many college games, had just over 60 college starts, just like Jaden Daniels did. And holy cow, is that the new calling card for picking a quarterback in the draft? I mean, you get some of these kids that played through the COVID years and got 6 years in college. over 60 starts. They've seen everything, and they're ready, more ready, I think you can argue, for the NFL. And with Payton kind of schooling him and bringing him along, you've got a guy that can hit all areas of the field with his arm and can take off and run for yardage as well. I mean, I don't want to call him a mini Josh Allen just yet, but there are some of the same elements to his game that Josh has in terms of being an all-around talent.
Yeah, you don't have to call him that because he has been called that by Steve Spagnuolo. I mean, Spags actually said that going into this Week 18 game. He said, when I see Bo Nix run, I see some flashes of Josh Allen. Now, I think Josh is a unicorn in terms of how he runs the football. I don't think there's a comparison out there. But Bo Nix is the Broncos' third leading rusher. I mean, of rushing plays over 20 yards, they have 10 for the season. They don't run the ball very well. Bo Nix has 6 of the 10. I mean, he is an explosive runner. He's got a quick twitch to him. He's tied for the team lead in rushing touchdowns. Like, he will tuck it and go, and that is a part that you're going to have to account for. But I like that you brought up the amount of experience that he has, because if you look at what Michael Penix has done in his short period of time as a starter in the NFL, and then obviously Jaden and Bo and what they've done for the course of this season, I think that college experience cannot be overlooked. And they're about as calm in big situations as you see rookie quarterbacks. And I think that's going to be a feather in the cap of Bo Nix going on the road, going into a hostile environment in Buffalo. If you're looking for any sort of help as a rookie quarterback, I think that experience does help him. It's an inexperienced group of skill guys around him outside of Cortland Sutton, right? I mean, there's some rookie receivers that he throws to. Sutton has been their go-to guy. And Bo's really had to carry this offense. In Buffalo, anybody up there, I'd keep an eye on. Sean Payton is completely fine putting him in the gun, playing 3 wide, not really running the football that much, and putting this offense on his rookie quarterback's shoulders. And he's answered the call more often than not. And I think that's maybe the most impressive part of it, is that he's had the ability to kind of really carry this offense for stretches, because that's the way Sean Payton has called this offense.
Yeah, how much credit does Sean Payton deserve for the way this team has turned it around? I mean, there's no question. I mean, it was an absolute disaster last year with the Russ Wilson experiment. And you got to tip your hat to the leadership inside the building and to Sean Payton for just cutting it. Like, listen, we got to move on, and then turning it around as fast as they did.
Yeah, he deserves a ton of credit. Him and general manager George Payton. There's so many Paytons in this town.
Yeah.
Peyton Manning, George Payton, Sean Payton. But you're right, they get a lot of credit. I mean, everybody was going, why are you going to let Justin Simmons walk, an all-pro safety? They haven't missed Justin Simmons at all on this defense. Brandon Jones has done a good job filling in, and as a unit, we talked about how good they've been. They let, one of the favorites is in terms of an experienced receiver, and Tim Patrick. They let him leave at the end of training camp because they wanted some young guys like Devon Vele to go out there and play. He's pulled a lot of levers with some young players and putting them in big spots, and it's paid off. I would say this is a young culture that he's established that they may not know any better, right? Sometimes with a young team, you have that to where they may not know what they're walking into in Buffalo, and that might be actually a little bit beneficial to what this team that Sean has built and put together. So yeah, the culture has flipped very quickly, and he's relied on a lot of young guys and flipped this roster. And the other part that he deserves credit for is they're working with about a third of the less money than everybody else is in the NFL with the dead money that they have with Russell Wilson. I mean, it's some of the most dead money we've ever seen from a single player ever. And they've still gotten themselves to the postseason. Sean has done a very impressive job. And I think when I mentioned how much, is put on Bo, I think that's also Sean kind of showing the league, like, none of you thought he was a first-round pick. I did. I think he's a great fit. Let me go succeed with this rookie quarterback. It's a little bit of Sean's personality, if you know it, the way he's called this season.
Oh, yeah.
What is your explanation for why the run game has been hit and miss for them this season? Because if you look at their offensive line, there are recognizable names there. I mean, Ben Powers, Quinn Miners, Mike McGlinchey, Garrett Bowles. I mean, these are all recognizable names for people that pay attention to the National Football League, and some veteran players at that. What has been the missing link there?
Well, it's been a revolving door for sure. They've been able to stay remarkably healthy up front, which is a feather in their cap. And I've talked to some defensive coordinators that they've gone against this year, and they've gone to me like, I look at the group up front, they're actually run graders. They're better at that than they are in terms of pass pro, and they just don't seem to run it. And DCs have said to me, like, they can run it. Why don't they? And it's been something that we've seen from Sean Payton putting it on his call sheet to saying run it, like you saw against the Chargers. Like, they just don't call a whole lot of runs, whether it's the revolving door of backs, whether Jaleel McLaughlin's kind of the hot one right now. Audric Estime, the rookie out of Notre Dame's gotten some run. And then Javonte Williams, I'd say that's probably the reason why this has struggled the most. 2 years removed from just a catastrophic knee injury that they were hoping this year he'd be back to the player he was before that knee injury. He kind of hasn't been. And then at the same time, he is hands down clearly the best pass protecting back that they have. So with throwing the ball as much as they do and wanting to protect Bo Nix, which they've done brilliantly this year, you have your worst running back on the field probably for the most number of snaps. And so that's been kind of just the situation that they've put themselves in terms of running the football and their inability to run the football.
Well, you mentioned Courtland Sutton as being kind of the veteran guy on their skill positions. They've got, Jordan Humphrey. They've got Marvin Mims, who has also played extremely well in the return game. What about their skill guys, aside from the running backs who have kind of revolved through there?
Yeah, Mims has been that try to get the ball in his hands a variety of ways. So you could almost throw what they do with him into a little bit of their run game, right? Whether it's some of these sweeps, some of these end arounds, some of these different ways to just get him the ball in space. That's kind of an element of the run game that's been lacking, just trying to find ways to get explosive. And Marvin's been really, really good over the last several weeks. I mentioned Vele, who's kind of come on. Troy Franklin hasn't done a whole lot. Was Bo Nix's teammate at Oregon, who they picked in the 4th round. But Courtland Sutton has been the go-to. And obviously it's a 50-50 ball type of receiver, a big-bodied receiver that has played really well in the red zone for them. What's been lacking for this team, and it's a surprise, right, because we know Sean Payton, is any production out of the tight end spot. I mean, it is kind of miraculous they're in the spot they're in, guys, because they don't run the ball all that well, and they don't run it all that often, and they don't have very much tight end production at all. And so a lot of this falls on Bo and the way things are schemed. I think that's a big part of the way this offense works is guys have to be schemed open. They have difficulty at times throwing the football downfield. They have sporadic moments where they're successful. But it's really Sean's scheme that just tries to get whoever's open, open as quickly as possible for Bo. But Courtland's really the one that has made this offense go, and Buffalo has to find a way to kind of defend those 50-50 balls that he's been so good at over the last couple of years.
All right, let's take a look at, the AFC picture here and some of the other matchups. I think Chargers-Texans is pretty intriguing. The Texans kind of limped to the finish a little bit. Injuries have kind of compromised the effectiveness of their offense. So what do you kind of see there against a Chargers team that looks to be on the ascent into the postseason?
Yeah, you're spot on. These are two teams headed in opposite directions right now, the way this second half of the season has gone. I've covered a couple of Texans games. I've covered a couple of Chargers games this year. And Jesse Minter, the defensive coordinator for LA, just keep an eye on that name. I mean, he's been outstanding. And he would be a guy that I think in the next cycle after this one, he's a head coaching candidate for sure. They've been so diverse and they've been so multiple as a defense. I think that's going to make things even more difficult on an offensive line in Houston that has just struggled. And talking to Bobby Slowick early in the year, their offensive coordinator, we're having different breakdowns in our offensive line, and we don't know which breakdown's going to happen on which play. And that makes it even harder on our quarterback in CJ Stroud. Oftentimes, if you have a weak link on your offensive line, guys, right, where maybe some of the pressure is going to come from. It kind of comes from a different spot, and that makes things even harder on the way CJ plays the position. And so the way that Jesse Minter mixes things up, I think makes things very difficult on this banged up Texans team, obviously at the wide receiver spot. And I think it's going to be a difficult game for Houston to come away with the way Herbert has played so efficiently and the way that Chargers defense has played.
And do you think did you chalk it up to injuries in Houston as their problem mainly?
It's injuries. It's talking to people that adjustments needed to be made and they haven't. Offensively, the book was out after the first year of so much success, and then you got to counter that, and they've had an inability to kind of counter that in what defenses have brought to this offense. I think that's been part of it. Now, we do have the opportunity in this game to have a Texans defense that has had moments where they've been outstanding. And so if they can flash and create some turnovers, Derek Stingley at the corner spot has been just unbelievable. And Ladd McConkey has been kind of the Chargers passing game. I mean, he has been unreal as a rookie. Praise across the league when I talk to people. If Stingley can kind of shut down Ladd McConkey, I think that does change things a little bit, though.
All right, let's flip it over to Ravens-Steelers round 3. And again, two teams seemingly going in different directions. Do you think Mike Tomlin pulls the Justin Fields card just to try to differentiate things and give Baltimore an extra thing to handle defensively?
Yeah, this has been a question for several weeks now. If you just kind of make your calls around the league, people just being curious, like, when does Fields start to have a little bit more of a role, right? He was better in the red zone than Russell Wilson was when he was the starter, honestly. So could he add an added element to their struggles in the red zone? And that's where people were trying to see. And I think what you do in the postseason, obviously, is I would want to leak this out if I was Mike Tomlin. You want somebody to prepare as much as possible. That's one of the things that makes the Ravens so difficult to go against, is because you have to prepare for so much during the week. Talk to coaches that have to go against them. The Bills have gone against them. I mean, there's so many different things with Lamar and company you have to prepare for. It makes Sunday all the more difficult. I would, if I was Mike Tomlin, wanted to kind of get out there that, hey, keep an eye out on some Justin Fields wrinkles. So just mainly so the Ravens have to prepare for it, and you have it in your back pocket to be better in the red zone, because I think you're going to need to do that against a Baltimore Ravens team that can just put points on the board sometimes just like that and find ways to snowball that. I noticed kind of this turn in Pittsburgh when I covered their game against Philadelphia, and talking to some people in Philadelphia, it was, we already know Russell Wilson. We didn't fear Russell Wilson. It's either touchdown, check down, and there's no intermediate game. And that's what's been lacking kind of in a lot of people's eyes with what's gone on with Pittsburgh in this offense. So it just seemed, talking to people in Philadelphia, what's gone on with this offense is starting to get a little predictable. And if some of those moon balls don't fall into George Pickens' hands, I think it's going to be hard to keep up with Baltimore.
But Pickens is kind of the key for Russ Wilson. When he was out, that started the downslide, and even when he got back in, it was hard to get the momentum back.
Very true. Yeah, exactly. And he's their guy. And if you talk to anybody around the league, they'll tell you that he's as talented as anybody at the wide receiver position. There's just a lot of other things that are going on there that they need to find ways to keep him successful and keep him on the field. And that's no secret, but he really is the one. I mean, they thought Mike Williams would start to coming off the knee back end of the year. They wanted a veteran, a guy that, could be that guy. We saw a great catch this past week, but someone that can go up and get the football when Russ lays these out there. But it's really been George Pickens. And then running the football, they stick with it, but they've had trouble getting it. And then they obviously had some drops. Fryermuth's a good player, but it's a limited offense in the way that you can attack a defense. And the other offense might be as versatile as you possibly could be as an offense.
All right, so NFC fans are going to have to wait until the end of the weekend before the slate even starts. AFC is going to be done by 4 o'clock on Sunday, and only then do the NFC matchups start. It's kind of a wacky way that they laid this out for the networks, but what to you is the most sexy NFC matchup? Is it Green Bay at Philly, Washington at Tampa, or is it Minnesota going to L.A.?
I was fascinated by what LA did. I mean, I would want to have, played my starters and avoided whoever lost that game between Minnesota and Detroit. But they Sean McVay, I think, knows more about football than I do. But I would say Green Bay and Philadelphia, to me, is the one that stands out. And because Jordan Love has it in him to go out there and play unbelievable football. We've seen it in the first round of the postseason before. And I think Philly might be, top to bottom, both sides of the ball, the most talented team in the NFL. Obviously, Detroit's great. Kansas City's great. But Detroit's banged up. And Kansas City, I just think it's Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and Steve Spagnuolo that make a lot of that go. Philly's roster is so damn talented. I think we got to keep an eye on where, Jalen Hurts is with this concussion that he's coming back from. That's a major storyline. But I do think the way they turn the football over in Green Bay, with the way that defense has the ability to play, I think this is the one that I want to keep an eye on, because that is a legit threat to a team that has Super Bowl aspirations for sure in Philadelphia.
Yeah, and the only thing is they might play without Christian Watson. It looks like he's out for the year with an ACL knee injury. Really bad break for Watson, who's
they're very versatile at the receiver spot, though. I will
yes,
say
they
that.
are. Oh, they have depth there for sure, and tight ends for days that they can throw to also and kind of sub into the passing game.
Maybe the probably the last one is the Tampa Bay hosting Washington. Two teams. Tampa Bay once again, first team ever to go to start. I think 4-6 or something, and make it to the playoffs, or 2-4. And they got back-to-back seasons, got to the playoffs, and they're hosting a Washington team where, hey, it's been a minute since Washington's been there.
Yeah. Yeah, I love this matchup too, just because we all need to start paying more attention. I know we are, but more attention to the little nuances of Jaden Daniels. I was at that game in Baltimore earlier in the season where he wholeheartedly thought he was going to beat Lamar. And you know what? Everybody in that locker room was like, Jaden just kind of ran out of time in this game, right? He went toe-to-toe with Lamar. In the big moments, the game slows down for him just in remarkable fashion. And so I love watching him play in big moments, play in big games. The poise is off the charts. I mean, when you talk to people in Washington, they can't say enough good things about Jaden Daniels. There's been some comps, and I'll probably get torched for saying this type of thing, but guys that have played with Patrick Mahomes that are playing with Jaden Daniels are like, there's some traits that I see. There's some traits that are, oh, there's no way I fail. You know what I mean? That type of vibe to him. And it's a really special thing that they've started, and they've started this turn much quicker than we thought. But man, like, who doesn't want to see Baker Mayfield play football? I mean, like, especially in week 18 going out there, I'm not sliding, I'm taking hits. And so these are two quarterbacks that can definitely will teams to win. And I think that makes this matchup kind of intriguing. But if Washington can go and win this game, I would also say, as a team that has some money and a team looking for another receiver and looking for obviously some other spots that they're looking to fill, what a free agent destination Washington has become immediately for anybody this offseason that might want to go to a team that they probably never wanted to play for, and now you're very intrigued to possibly play for.
Yeah, I just think that game's got the biggest chance to be the shootout of the weekend between Baker Mayfield. 41 touchdown passes this year. He's got. I mean, everybody's talking about Lamar and Josh and the productivity, but holy cow, like Baker, 41 touchdown passes.
And they lost Chris Godwin so early, like, who's a great receiver. You know what I mean? And so they've had some young receivers come on as well, and Baker's played great. It's one of the reasons why we're hearing Liam Cohen, their offensive coordinator's name, kind of get thrown around in some of these coaching searches. It's been a brilliant job on that side of the ball.
James, thanks as always for the time. We appreciate it.
James.
We'll catch up with you later down the line here, man.
For sure, guys. Good chatting with you as always.